our audio is working here. Sorry about that, guys. I got to fix one thing here. So you get to talk to my beautiful guest. Go ahead, babe. Talk to them.
Oh, hello, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? Make the little thumbnail that, has the title of the broadcast, but I don't actually get to know exactly what's going to be happening. So just so you know, I think it makes me a really talented broadcaster, podcaster, because I get to be on the fly.
Incredible.
That would be amazing if I had a good poker face and I could just act like I knew exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't have that ability.
People would definitely cheer.
Oh my gosh. That's my favorite part about doing this is definitely
The sound effects?
Sound effects, yeah.
Come on, they're amazing. I know you don't love them, but I love them, and they're hilarious. And
Okay.
I've only used them once or twice without her on the broadcast, so my goal is to press every button on this Rodecaster Pro in this broadcast. So
Oh, no.
it's going to be a lot of fun, guys.
All right, friends, I have our Facebook comment stream open. So comments are always open when we're broadcasting, and we love to hear your questions, comments. We also love to give little friend shout outs. So make sure you comment if you're watching on Facebook. I think Dean can see the YouTube comments. So comment, and we would love to answer your questions live, give you guys a shout out, all of those things. And we're so glad you guys are here with us tonight.
Yes, we are. And we do have some important things we're going to talk about. But first, we have a really important announcement. For those of you that live anywhere near Brainerd, Baxter, Minnesota, we have an incredible revival event coming up called A Night of Hope. I want to invite you to come because you might be thinking, what is this? Is it a bunch of weirdo stuff? What's going on there? It really is an encounter with the presence of God. And what's going to happen is there'll be powerful worship led by our friend John Russell. He's from Minneapolis. He's one of the most humble people I've ever met. He doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. He's not out to prove anything about himself. He just genuinely loves to lead people in worship of the Lord, who deserves more than we could ever give. The second thing is we are going to preach an uncompromising message from the Word of God. I'm not trying to criticize anyone else out there. I'm just saying there's a lot of fluff out there these days, and that's not us. We have a mandate, so to speak, from the Lord to the best of our ability at these events to bring any kind of depth to the Word of God that maybe you might not hear on a regular basis, because the Bible is deep, it is powerful, and it's worth digging into. I love these events because the Lord always speaks in a way that is inspiring and reaches everyone in the audience, to my knowledge. And secondly, the amount of personal ministry you're going to have available to you is through the roof. Many people don't understand what I say when I talk about these prayer lines, because for most of us, prayer is kind of that polite thing at the very end of the service where you stand at the stage, and if something really bad's going on in your life, you walk up there really awkwardly in front of everyone and you get prayed for. What if we flip the script on that? What if we flip the script and talk about the power of prayer? And if you really believe in the power of prayer, why wouldn't you be the first person in line to get prayed for? So we created these prayer lines. Imagine 10 people in a line. And when you come up for prayer, it's not just one person that's going to pray for you, but the first person, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, all the way through the entire line. That way, by the time you get out, you've had all of these people pray for you. And the things that we hear often are people saying things like, whoa, the Lord sees me. He knows me. He knows exactly what I'm going through. How did all these people know these things about me? And it doesn't matter what denomination you go to, because a lot of different denominations come together to be the prayer team. It's a beautiful act of unity for churches, not just to exist in the same building together, but to come and serve together, to pray together. I guarantee you, if you go through the prayer lines and you come to this event, your life is going to be blessed. Now, we haven't even talked about the opportunity for people to give their life to Jesus, for discipleship, to serve on the team, to have prayers for healing. We just did a fundraiser in the Minneapolis area, and 5 people at least said they were physically and miraculously healed. Praise Jesus. We also do deliverance. Did you know that deliverance is one of the most needed forms of ministry in the world today, in the body of Christ as well? Not just out there, those people out there, but inside the body of Christ as well. So you're going to encounter the presence of God in opportunities. You don't want to miss this. No, it will not be live streamed. I apologize. We will replay a bunch of it after the fact. But if you live anywhere near Brainerd, Minnesota, this is worth the drive. You definitely want to come. Last time we did this event, which was back in March, it was so full they had to start bringing in chairs to seat the people that were coming in. So I just want to encourage you, come and join us. We would love to have you. And if you live somewhere where you can't come to this event, why don't you reach out to us and let's talk about doing an event like this in your city. Did you know that's possible? All you have to do is reach out to us. You can type it in the comments here, or you can go to awakeninghopeministries.com. You can click on the Book Us link, and it'll walk you right through. We will work with you in any way that we can to try to get these revival events to come to your city. Okay, so now let's get into the topic at hand. So my wife is not lying to you. I did not walk through this with her on purpose. I obviously know there's value in being prepped and ready. And for those of you that watch our live streams, usually we have one specific topic where I'm trying to really dig as deep as we can in that moment and bring some fruit to the surface. Tonight, we're going to try something just a little different. We're going to have a conversation together talking about relationships. My wife and I do marriage conferences, marriage counseling, and normal counseling. And therefore, tonight, we thought it'd be fun just to have a conversation where we're going to talk about 3 pillars. I'm sure there's more than that, but we're just going to pick on 3 of them tonight that are so important for any relationship. Now, let me quantify this for a moment. The reason we decided to do this is because, well, I decided to do this and told my wife, this is what we're doing, get ready. But what we're going to do tonight is, I hear this often. I see good people that they love Jesus, they're faithful believers, but they lose their job, or they're not in good favor with their boss, who's also a believer, or they have relationships that are constantly decaying and ending. And unfortunately, some of them even have marriages that are decaying and ending. And they look in the mirror and what they see is a pretty good person. They say, I'm not such a bad person. Why don't they like me? Don't they see what I have to offer? What's wrong with them? And the problem is I think one of the most difficult things to do with any person is getting them to be honest with themselves. Our pastor said this a couple Sundays ago, and it's very wise. Pastor Heath, I'll give you credit. Shout out there. That was for you, buddy. He said, you know what? You don't know what it's like to be married to you. And therefore, sometimes you got to figure out what it's like to be married to you. And when you start to ask your spouse questions, what it's like to be married to you, you might discover that you put off some things that are actually really unattractive or repelling, repulsing, disconnecting. And we all do it, is the problem. And the thing is that most of us think we're not doing that. Because we view ourselves through the lens of, but I'm a pretty good person. What's your problem? Why can't you put up with my stuff because I'm a good person, but I definitely don't want to put up with your stuff. You need to change. And the problem is that a lot of believers are missing out not only on the potential joy in their relationships, but they're also missing out on promotions in their jobs. They're missing out on growth and joy in their marriages. They're just missing out so much, even in their relationship with God. Because when you have a really poor view of what you can put off, for instance, if you're an ungrateful person, you might discover that, let me put it this way. When Jesus healed the 10 lepers and only one of them came back to say thank you, and it clearly affected Jesus' heart, what does that tell you? That if you're a person that gets blessed and you don't even come back and turn around to say thank you, if that affects the heart of God, it's going to affect the heart of people. So tonight, I'm not going to pretend like these are the only 3 pillars, but we're going to work through 3 things that I know are extremely essential to any relationship. So this applies to marriage. We'll probably even reference marriage more than anything else. But what if you employed this even in your workplace or in your ministry? Doesn't matter if you're the boss or if you are just working at a ministry for someone else. It doesn't matter. What if you applied these things? Because what you're going to discover is if you do, you're actually becoming more Christ-like. Now, last time we talked about the fruit of the Spirit and how most people don't value maturity. They don't value actually being intentional. For instance, growing in the fruit of the Spirit, love, peace, joy, patience, kindness, all the things. They would all agree and nod their heads that, yes, those are good things, but when was the last time you were intentional at growing in those things? Saying, no, I want to get good at this, because when I'm kind, I'm not only bearing the fruit that the Holy Spirit is in me and changing my life, but I'm actually bearing fruit in the moment that is blessing other people. So I'm going to flip this over to both of us, and I'm going to talk about the first word. Now, I'm just going to say the word, and babe, I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word trust. Why do you think trust is important in a relationship?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think of trust, I actually think of vulnerability, and I think of being able to be completely genuine, vulnerable, raw, and trust that the other person, especially when it comes to relationships, I think you have to understand that with trust comes a certain level of vulnerability. And on one side, there's the person who is giving the trust and saying, I'm trusting you with my vulnerable parts, my requests, my desires, all of those things. But then there's the other person that the trust is given to, and they get the chance to honor that. They get the chance to uphold that. So say I had some sort of, I don't know, we'll just use a recent example. I was feeling really vulnerable, and I called you and told you, hey, I'm feeling really vulnerable right now, kind of emotional about something that happened. And in that moment, I am trusting that you are going to do well with the circumstance at hand. So I'm trusting that you are going to honor what I'm saying. You're not going to mock it, reject it, belittle it. So this is like a super niche example of trust. But I think in that, trust is essential for the success of a relationship, because without trust, there starts to be a breakdown of those things like vulnerability, genuineness, authenticity even. Because if for whatever reason, either party isn't trusting of the other person, they will start to withhold those vulnerable moments, those genuine thoughts, or those whatever it is, feelings. They'll start to withhold that. And that starts the breakdown of a relationship when you are withholding parts of yourself, is probably a good way to say it. If you're withholding it all, then the breakdown starts because there's lack of trust. And so obviously, if there's not trust, you are going to have a hard time having a successful relationship, because you're going to have a hard time being authentic, vulnerable, raw, all those things.
Now, here's something that I know I've said to more than one person. It's been quite a few people actually that they come to us wanting marriage counseling or pre-marriage counseling, and the number one rule for people that are about to get married is they all think they're different. They all think that they have it figured out and everyone else is just bad at marriage and they're going to prove everyone else wrong. And when I ask people questions like, why are you going to choose this person to be married to? If I lined up 10 people, why would you choose them? Now, that's a difficult question to answer, and I get that. But the reason I ask it is because it's very telling. And most of the time, when people tell me I choose this person, they say things such as, well, we have a lot in common. We have a lot of similar interests. Now, all of us would agree those are good things. Now, but let me ask you the question. I do believe that following Jesus improves the chances of you not getting divorced, but we all know that there are legitimate people who love Jesus who still get divorced. So what's going on there? And so I tell these couples, love in the sense of you've got similar interests, you just love them, you're attracted to them, whatever it may be. You're both following Jesus. The problem is that relationships hinge on trust, not similarities. They hinge on trust. Similarities are great. It makes it easier to find things to do together. Because if you both love to cook or you both love to hunt, it makes it easy for you to go hang out and be friends. Friendship is a great thing in marriage. I think everyone would agree with that. But if you can't trust your partner, then it doesn't matter how much you love Jesus. It doesn't matter how much you have in common. Trust is one of the most, if not the most, foundational thing that everything else in the relationship is built on. Now, hold on. Most of you are probably saying, no, Dean, it's actually love. And the other half of you are saying, no, Dean, it's actually Jesus. Okay, can we just rewind the clock back to when I said if you do these things, you're actually becoming like Jesus? So can we be honest that if you become like Jesus, that's a great foundation to build upon. Now, let me ask the question. If you are going to, I'm going to save that for a second here. If you are going to demonstrate trustworthiness like Jesus, you can trust Jesus. There's many Bible verses. I didn't pull up some of them, but there's one in Psalms that says, Lord, I trust you with my salvation. So clearly he can be trusted. You're trusting him with your eternity, that when you die, he's going to catch you, he's going to bring you to heaven, and you're going to be good to go, right? Well, if you can trust God, what would happen if God broke your trust? You know, God made a mistake. He didn't show up when he said he was gonna. He broke your trust. What would that do to every other area that you had trusted him with? Now, he's not going to break your trust because he's perfect. But let me ask the question about marriage then. In marriage or relationships in general, again, even in the business world, once trust is broken in one area, at least I can say this from the flooring days, if we made a mistake that was truly, honestly a mistake, and the homeowner saw it before we did, they would start to lose trust in us, and they would examine everything with a fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass and everything else, because suddenly trust was broken. Unintentionally, but trust was broken. But if we did everything without those mistakes, then trust was gained. Now, you can rebuild trust, but the point I'm trying to make here is that in every relationship, most of us undervalue what trust does inside of any relationship. So I have some things written here, but I want to ask you first, okay, my dear woman. What do you think, if you were going to say some one-word answers, what would the fruit of trust be? If I demonstrate trust to you, what are things that would be produced in your heart?
Oh, if you demonstrate trust, okay, so number one, we should tell the audience that we're actually sitting across from each other because That makes more sense if I look the wrong direction, because we're right in the same room. So that's fun. It doesn't look like it, but we are. And okay, if you demonstrated trust, what fruit would be built
in your life? And let me quantify that even more.
Okay.
So let's say you trust me with all the kids for you to leave for a day, and it goes really well. What would that do in your heart for the future?
Well, I think like one word answer is hard, but I think in that scenario, it would make me being gone actually better for me selfishly, because I wouldn't be thinking, oh, is he going to remember that Lucy needs a bath? Or is he going to remember that William likes to sleep with his stuffed dinosaur? Or is he going to make sure that Wes and Link go for their run every day? If it went really well and you did all the normal things that we normally do that I wonder if you know that we do, I would be like, oh, this is great. Now me being gone is going to be a piece of cake for him, and it's going to set me at ease that this is something that can happen on the regular. If I was just thinking of simple words or phrases, I think if you demonstrated trust, I think I, in turn, would feel safe. I think I would feel seen. I would feel protected. Though I think those are the top three that just come to mind. Safe and protected might be the same thing, but not always. So I think those would be the simple things that come to mind if you demonstrated trust.
That's a great list. Now, I'm going to lay out just a few things that would demonstrate trust. So if you want to say, that's great, Dean and Cassie, but how do I actually build trust with someone? Well, here's a few ways. Be consistent. When you're consistent, people begin to trust you. For instance, if you're kind the first few times you respond and then the third time you explode, they're not going to trust you. If you are consistent in anything, people begin to trust you. So if you're consistent in the way you interact with people, if you're consistent in the way you finish your work, in the way you serve your spouse, whatever that is, consistency builds trust. Now, you might say, I love my spouse, but when they're not consistent, it breaks trust. We've all done it. I've done it. My wife has done it. We break trust simply by not being consistent. Now, this is where people would look in the mirror and say, but I'm a great person. What's their deal? Well, if you're not consistent, they're not going to trust you. And when you lose trust, other things start to go with it. And the problem is that lacking consistency is actually a relationship destroyer. Here's another thing. If you want to demonstrate trust, be transparent. So we have lots of friends in relationships, and I love it when couples specifically aren't afraid to hand their phone over to their other person, right? You know, the husbands giving it to their wives and vice versa, because what it demonstrates is transparency. That there's nothing going on behind closed doors here. There's nothing going on this screen that you're not allowed to see and be a part of. Transparency is huge. And even being transparent in how you're feeling. Did you know that even if you express what some would consider a negative emotion for the sake of building the relationship, it demonstrates transparency, which leads to trusting more. So for those of you that think, well, I have to be a brown noser in order to get trust built. No, it's actually the opposite. Most people that have brown nosers in their life don't trust the brown nosers. They use the brown nosers. And I'm not condoning that. It's just, that's the way it is. If you really want to build trust, you need to be transparent. Now, here's a third one, and I think this is powerful, being faithful. How many pastors out there would say yes and amen, be faithful, because they go to work day in and day out trying to build their churches and shepherd the people well. And the moment they preach a bad sermon or they look at someone wrong, people leave and go to a different church because they're offended. So they demand everything from the pastor, but they're not willing to even be faithful to their home church body. Now, don't play the devil's advocate here. This is not, oh yeah, but if you knew what my pastor did, I know there's good reasons to leave churches. I'm saying if you are consistently not demonstrating trust through consistency, transparency, and faithfulness, don't be surprised when you don't get promoted, when your spouse kind of dances on eggshells around you, simply because they can't trust you. They give you something, a task, or it doesn't matter if it's a task or if it's a desire. So a task would be, hey, I'm asking you to clean the house, or you're asking me to clean the car, or whatever it may be, and I don't get it done, you don't get it done. Now I don't trust you. And even if it's a minor break in trust, we're not talking you had an affair and it's a major deal. It's still a breaking of trust. And the problem is most of us don't understand that breaking trust leads to breaking intimacy. It also leads to not getting promoted. It also leads to friends not wanting to hang out with you because they just don't trust you. Now, what are the fruits that can come? And you already said some of these, but let me throw in some of my own. What if some of the fruit of demonstrating these things, if I was demonstrating trust by being consistent, transparent, and faithful, I think some of the fruit, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, would be vulnerability. It would be closeness. It would be joy in the relationship. Because when I know, for instance, I can trust my wife to not run to her parents and tell them the stupid things that I do, or run around and tell other people the stupid things that I do, when I know I can trust her, even when I'm not in the room, it helps me want to be vulnerable because I trust you. So in other words, if trust is gone, vulnerability probably is too. If trust is gone, feeling close probably is gone too. If trust is gone, so is joy in the relationship. Because how can I enjoy this relationship? How can I open up to you? How can I bond with you if I can't trust you? Therefore, the fruit of this is those things. Now, before I move on here, what are your thoughts on this?
I totally agree with you. Now, your list was consistency,
transparency and faithfulness
produce trust.
Mm-hmm. Those are ways of building trust. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree with that. I think consistency is huge because any inconsistency makes people question your trustworthiness for sure, but are you a person of your word? Are you a person of integrity? Do you mean what you say inside, outside, whatever? And so being consistent to what you say is huge. And I think transparency is huge and can be tricky because once you start to, be married for more than 5 minutes, I think there is the tendency to withhold from your spouse that level of transparency that you might have had previous to be married or when you're newlywed and everything is flowers and unicorns, because you know them better. And so in the knowing someone better, you know what triggers them. You know what sets them off. So being transparent, you might withhold more, not because you're trying to keep secrets, just because you are trying to protect them from something that you think could damage them or something that you might be avoiding conflict. That might be something that you're avoiding. And so in that lack of transparency, you might be causing a breakdown of trust unknowingly with good intentions. But that transparency, always, checking in on more than what might be there to make sure the transparency never leaves is, I think it's huge.
Yeah, Megan's asking a question. Good to see you on, Megan. And I want to...
Oh, I can't see her question.
I want to, it's because she chimed in on YouTube.
Oh, on YouTube.
So
Woo-hoo!
I want to demonstrate here that most people think, oh, it wasn't that big a deal that I showed up late to work. Well, when you show up late to work consistently, you break trust. Well, I don't show up late every day. Well, we run events here in the US and around the world. And I'm just going to tell you, people ask me all the time, how do you get started doing a crusade in another country? The first thing I tell them is, I need one person that I can trust. That's the first thing out of my mouth, is I tell them, I need one person that I can trust to handle money, that they're going to spend it the way I tell them to. There's not going to be any shady business going on. They're not going to be selfish or greedy. They're going to do everything for the kingdom of God. They're going to sacrifice with us. I need to know I can trust them. So it doesn't matter how much we have in common, doesn't matter how much we like each other, doesn't matter all those other things. All that matters is that I can trust them. And if you don't have trust, you're also going to lose vulnerability, you're going to lose closeness, and you're going to lose joy in relationships. So what I'm trying to point out here is there is either great fruit that you gain from actively trying to build trust. I want to demonstrate trust, because most of us say, well, you should be able to trust me. I'm a good person. Prove it. Prove it. Show your spouse you can trust me. And if you ever mess it up, be quick to repent and keep going, because we all break trust. We all remember, consistency is one of the biggest things in marriage. It's one of the biggest things in business and anything else, going to the gym, whatever. It's consistency. If you can't be consistent, then you're not going to see the results, and you're not going to have people trusting you at greater degrees. People need to know that you're consistent, transparent, and that you're faithful. Then people begin to place their trust in you. And the fruit of them trusting you is they open up, they become vulnerable with you. You start to enjoy the relationship because they can trust you. You start to get closer to them because they can trust you. So be active in building trust. Now let's answer Megan's question. Megan writes in on YouTube and says, but what if you're on the other side? How do we learn to trust others again? What would you say?
How do we learn to trust others again? Ooh, so when trust has been broken, this is huge. So it can be super tricky, but I think part of trusting others is, number one, there is no command in the Bible that says you have to trust others. There is a command to trust God in all things. And so I think trust between humans is earned. I think the command to trust God is absolute, and we must trust God, no matter our circumstances or whatever. But I think the trust between others is something that is built upon, and it is something that you can earn and you can lose. And that's just part of the human condition. And so, yes, forgiveness of one another is a command in the Bible, and reconciliation to one another is part of relationships. But trusting someone is something that is built and can easily be torn down. And so if you're a person who's been hurt, let's just pretend in a relationship that's not marriage. So say that you are in a boyfriend-girlfriend type relationship, and it wasn't a healthy relationship, and the person broke trust. And you're like, oh man, this is rough. I still want to be with this person, but they broke my trust. And so I have to, see what's happening. It's okay for you as the person who needs that trust to be rebuilt to watch for actions that remain consistent. Let's go back to that. And say, okay, we kind of went in the negative here on trust. Let's try to get us back to not only the positive, but to the baseline. Baseline trust is just, I trust you. Sure. I might not trust you with all the vulnerabilities of my heart or all the little idiosyncrasies or all of those type of things, but you can say, we're going to work towards that, and you can watch for that, and then you can slowly start to give that trust. Now, say it is a marriage relationship and your spouse has broken trust. I think this is, in some ways, I think it's easier than in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and in some ways it's harder because you know the person so well. So say your spouse breaks trust, I think it's kind of the same of, there's more compartments, I think, because of marriage, but I think there's okay, I'm just going to watch and I'm going to try again. And there's a lot of just trying again. And it's kind of like any other task that you're learning to do, or a better than task is muscle you're learning to work. Just trying again, getting stronger, going heavier, whatever. I was just at the gym, so this is fresh. In my head.
Revelations from the gym.
Revelations from the gym. Just try again. Okay? But you can, actually, this is a great analogy, because at the gym today, I was doing shoulder presses, and I started with a 25-pound dumbbell doing shoulder presses. And after my first set, I realized, like, this is really hard. I don't know if I'm going to be able to complete a second set going this heavy. And so I was like, okay, we're going to try it. I took my 20-second break, and then I tried again, and I got to like 5 instead of 12. And I was like, I am like shaking. But so I put the weight down. I just put it on my lap. I took a deep breath. I grounded myself again, and then I tried again. And I think with trust, this is the same thing. I didn't just throw the weight away. I didn't even drop set to a lighter weight. I just was like, we're going to try again. We're going to take a breath, and we're going to try again. And I think that's the same with building trust with your spouse, because when your spouse breaks trust, I think it's easy to be like, whoop, that's it. I'm never trusting you again. Like, that is so easy and petty and in my opinion, stupid, because that's the easy way out. But if marriage is intended to make us holy, not happy, then the right thing to do is to get back in the fight for holiness in your marriage and say, I'm going to try again. And just because they broke my trust this one time doesn't mean that they are put in the penalty box forever. It's okay, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to work on my own stuff, my own character flaws. I'm going to make sure my heart is in a posture that I'm not expecting too much, that I'm not asking something that's unrealistic, or that I'm not putting something on them that I shouldn't. So all of those things, I think, are a part of growing in character, growing in marriage, growing in holiness as unto the Lord. But having the mindset that people are people fail, we fail each other. And failure might be a strong word, but we fail each other. And so having the idea in my head that I'm going to fail you in trust, you're going to probably fail me in trust. And it's okay to, essentially take that weight, put it on my lap, take a deep breath, and then try again. And it might even feel heavier the second time or the third time or the fourth time. But in reality, what you're doing, you're not only building reps for yourself of learning how to trust when you're in a relationship with another human being that's capable of failing you, you're also building into them, I still trust you. I still choose you, and I still choose to trust you even when it's heavy for me.
Yeah, and let me summarize a little bit of what you're saying and add something to it. So I agree with what you're saying. I just want to add something to it. So what you just demonstrated was forgiveness. Let me say it this way. Anytime you have trust broken and you're not the one that broke it, someone betrayed you or whatever, there has to be a demonstration and then a decision. And here's what I mean by that. I can demonstrate trustworthiness, but there still has to come a point where you choose to trust me. And the only way you can choose to trust me is if you forgive me for the prior break of trust.
Totally.
Now, in order to so I agree with your statement that trust is earned in one sense, but actually trust is demonstrated in a way that there's a lot of people that demonstrate trustworthiness, but the other person never chooses to trust them. And therefore there's a vicious cycle in their relationship as long as that's going. And it might not even be that person that even broke the trust. It might be a past hurt and people refuse to trust them again. So I would say in anything that we're going to talk about tonight, there is a demonstration and then a decision. I can demonstrate trustworthiness. I can be consistent, transparent. I can be faithful, but you still at some point have to choose to trust me.
Absolutely.
So, and that's true with God. And that's how we can flesh all this out, is that God is the epitome of trustworthiness. That doesn't mean you trust him.
Totally.
Think about anything in your life where you should trust God, but you don't. He never broke trust. He never failed us in any way, shape, or form. And yet, if we were honest with ourselves, there's areas we struggle trusting him. And the answer is because we haven't chosen to. We don't want to choose to trust him, whether that's releasing control, which forgiveness is releasing control of holding something over someone's head. And if I'm going to choose to forgive you, that means I'm opening the door to, I might get hurt again. And that's a different subject for a different day. But
We can do that one. I love the forgiveness topic. So let's put that on the docket.
I agree with you. And no relationship can survive without forgiveness. As we talked about last week, you want to be quick to forgive. So, Megan, that's a great question. I think the answer is the first thing that you have the responsibility for as the person that has been hurt is being quick to forgive.
Yeah.
But here would be my 2 cents. If someone wants to rebuild your trust, or as my wife said, they want to earn your trust back, I would point them to ways they can be consistent, transparent, and faithful.
Yep.
So if it's someone that broke your trust and they saying, oh, man, I want to make this right. Great. I forgive you. I'm not going to hold this against you, but I'm also not going to give you the gift of my trust until you demonstrate some trustworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an area that you can be consistent in. And if you're not going to be consistent, then I'm probably not going to trust you. If you're not going to be transparent or faithful, I'm probably not going to trust you. Now, those aren't the only ingredients to trust, but I think they're great ones. I think they are building blocks to that pillar. Now, we've spent a lot of time talking about trust, and rightfully so, because I still think that it is one of the biggest building blocks. Did you know you can actually love someone a lot and not trust them?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter how much you love them. If you don't trust them, you're not going to experience vulnerability, closeness, or joy in the relationship.
There's not going to be fullness.
There's not going to be fullness. I agree. So I'm going to flip over here to our second word. So great question, Megan. Keep asking them. If there's anyone else out there that has questions or thoughts, throw them in the chat. We'd love to interact with you. That's why we go live on these types of videos instead of just pre-recording everything and putting it out there. Now, the second pillar is a word, kindness. What comes to your mind in the word kindness?
When I think of kindness, I think of intentionality, because especially in marriage, it's easy to just know the person so well that you're just kind of going along with the status quo. And so when I think of kindness, especially in marriage, I think of the intentionality that it takes, because we've been married for 14 years. And so there's a lot of, hey, I know your ins and outs. I know your idiosyncrasies that other people might not know. And in that knowing, there's a comfortability. That's a really great word. There's a comfortability that comes with knowing the person. And so the level of kindness required to actually build into success, a successful, happy, the fullness of a good relationship, I think there has to be intentionality. And at the beginning of a relationship, dating, engagement, marriage, of course you're going to be kind, because you are still, in a sense, trying to earn the person's trust. Hey, going back to that. But you're also trying to earn their affection in certain ways of, there's a little bit of a performance mentality and so many fresh feelings of infatuation and blah, blah, blah. So kindness comes a little bit easier because you don't know them as well. There's not all of the history built in to where things have just become very comfortable. And of course they know I love them. It's that age old, I told you I loved you on the day we got married, and if it changes, I'll let you know. That's like the dumbest thing ever. But in that, there's a little bit of truth to that, where some people live out that without realizing it, that I choose, of course I'm going to be kind to you because we're married now. And if I decide not to be kind to you, I'll let you know. But in that, you lose a little bit of intentionality just because of the comfort of the security of the relationship, which sounds terrible, but I think if every married couple took an honest look at their, like, just go for a 24-hour period and was able to like write down how kind they were to their spouse, I think most people would actually see a deficit that they
for sure.
I don't think people would actually like, I don't think unless they slowed down enough to say like, if we're going to take an inventory of my kind acts in the last 24 hours, I for sure am like, oh shoot, I don't know if I can fill one hand. Like, was I kind to you? Because kindness, I just think intentionality when it comes to relationships and kindness, you have to be intentional or you're gonna miss it and you're just gonna be comfortable and complacent. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, some people definitely view kindness as weakness, and that's so far from the truth. Jesus is kind. God is kind.
I think that's because kindness gets lumped in with the fruits of the Spirit as this like girly, flowery sweetness thing, and it's actually not that at all. And I think it just easily gets lumped in there because it fits on your wall really well with gather, goodness, and whatever, gratefulness, or whatever those little things they put on the wall are.
I think you're probably right. That's definitely a lot of people's perceptions. And sometimes people view kindness as disingenuous. Because there is a type of political nature to some pastoral ministry where I'm not allowed to be honest with how I feel because I have to be kind. And people just misunderstand what it means to be kind. You can have a very hard conversation and be kind the whole time.
Totally.
Kindness never comes at the cost of being genuine or transparent or authentic. Kindness is just finding the kindest way to say it. Now, for those of you that don't know, I was in a Christian band for almost 10 years. And this impacted me more than, and I hope I get to see this guy again so I can tell him how much it impacted me. We were on tour as the warm-up band for some bigger bands, one of them being this guy named Brian Head Welch, who, those of you that don't know, he was the guitar player for Korn, still is the guitar player for Korn, but at the time he had taken a break from Korn, and we were warming up for him and a couple other bands, and they are a little more hardcore than my band was, and they wore a lot more makeup. I'll just put it that way. And they were heavy on the eyeliner. Well, we became friends. And one night I thought, this is going to be fun. I'm going to wear eyeliner like them just to be silly, just to be fun, and to have the camaraderie with friends. So they pulled out their eyeliner and they lit me up. I looked like some gothic something coming out of the woodworks. And my band, I'm going to say this nicely, one of them came up and was very rude. Instead of being kind in the way they were saying, hey, you look ridiculous, they were actually really hurtful and purposely hurtful. And they even admitted it. The tour manager looked at him and said, bro, that's not kind. And my band friend said, but it's true. And he said, you need to find a different way to say it, though. So he wasn't saying don't be authentic, don't be true. What he was saying is find a different way, a kind way to say, hey, man, I know you're doing this to be silly and to be fun, but I think you're going to get down and regret this, that it looks ridiculous. There's a kind way to say it. It's not filling it with 10 million extra words. It's not coming at the cost of being direct. It's actually just finding a different way to say it that's not rude. Now, I just want to bring up a couple verses that I pulled out to help demonstrate some of this. So, number 1, the poor uses entreaties, but the rich answer roughly. That's Proverbs 18:23. Now, entreaties is kind of a funny word, and different Bible translations use different words to just basically say the poor is begging, the poor is pleading because they know they have nothing to offer, whereas the rich person answers roughly. The problem with some of us is when we are not humble and we view ourselves as above someone, we can answer very roughly, and that's not kind. And we never have the right to answer in an unkind way. I'm a big fan of Charlie Kirk. I think a lot of people watching are also fans of Charlie Kirk. And I love, even though he was very direct and he was at times a little antagonistic of people, and he needed to be to get the point across, he was always kind. He never called them horrible, terrible names. He never cussed them out. He never stood up and started throwing a fight or whatever. He was always kind. And he would, to some degree, match them. So if they came in low, he would stay low. But if they came in big with something to prove, he would take them down a few notches. But he always did it in a way that would be considered kind. I'm not saying he's 100% perfect, but the videos I've seen, he was always kind. Not perfectly loving and all those things. Some people were offended by what he said, but he said it in a kind way. And if you're going to have relationships, marriage, business, whatever, if you cannot be kind, it's going to cost you a lot. I'm going to read you one more verse here, and I put the amplified version up here on purpose because it helps expound a little bit on what these things mean. In 1 Corinthians 13:7, it says, love bears all things. And you can see they added, regardless of what comes. So most of us, we read that verse and say, yeah, love should bear all things. It should, but is it? And that's the test. Can it bear whatever comes? Regardless of what comes, it's going to bear all things. It believes all things, looking for the best in each one. Did you know that looking for the best in anyone else, especially your spouse, is an act of kindness and love? That if they do something and I'm looking for the best, that's an act of me being kind towards them because I'm believing the best in them. I'm looking for it. Love hopes all things. It's remaining steadfast during difficult times. That's back to our consistency thing. But then lastly, but not least, endures all things without weakening. What a great statement. Can you imagine enduring all things without weakening? You go through hard times and you didn't weaken. You stayed strong and maybe got stronger, but you weren't weakened. Wouldn't that be a great goal for our relationships, that we are enduring all things without weakening? And Paul is writing this obviously in the love chapter, but a lot of this has to do with being kind to one another, that I'm hoping things for you. I'm believing things in you. I'm believing that you might have come across differently than what you meant. I'm believing the best. I'm going to bear all things with you. I'm going to do all of this. Now look at this. Ephesians 4:32. Here's our word. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. This is a command. It's not a suggestion. This isn't something that is, hey guys, this would be good to do every once in a while. He's commanding them, be kind to one another. And he's saying this not from just his own desire. He's saying this because Jesus desires us to be kind to one another. When you have a lot of kids like us, you get it a little deeper because you watch them not be bad kids, but not necessarily being kind to one another. And they might walk away and say, well, I'm a pretty good kid. Well, you are, but you were rude to your brother or sister. And now there's a greater chance they're going to be rude to someone else, and it's going to continue living on. But look at Galatians 5. We talked about this last week. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. And if you're not practicing kindness, I do think it's fair to say that you're missing out on becoming Christ-like, and one of the best pillars in your relationship. Think about this. My wife just said this, and she's absolutely right that all of us fall short. And you need to remember that. You're going to fall short in all of these areas. In consistency, in transparency, you're going to fall short because you're not perfect. That doesn't mean you don't make it your goal to grow. You've got to make it your goal to grow. And if you do, guess what's going to happen? You're going to become kinder and kinder to your spouse. I'm angry, but I'm proving self-control by reacting to you in a kind way when my emotions want to react to you very differently. Maybe you even deserve an unkind response, but I'm choosing kindness. You want to know why? Because I'm bearing the fruit of the Spirit that is not defined by your circumstance, but is actually supposed to be consistent through any circumstance. I want to be kind to you. I'm not going to call you names. I'm not going to swear and cuss at you. I'm not going to belittle you. I'm going to be kind to you. Here's an interesting thought that I think all of us would benefit from dwelling on. We want from someone else what we don't want to be ourselves. I want to say that again. We want from someone else what we don't want to be for ourselves. Think about this. Let's use marriage as an example. Do you want your spouse to be consistent? Do you want your spouse to be transparent? Do you want them to be faithful? Do you want them to be kind? When you are unkind and you want them to seek out why you're being unkind, you're asking them to be kind in the face of you being rude. And you think that's okay because of what you feel. And that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that it doesn't matter what you feel. It doesn't justify being rude or unkind. It doesn't justify it. The fruit of the Spirit is kind even when you feel some really strong things. But all of us want that from others. We expect it from others. We just don't want to be that ourselves because we want the freedom to let our emotions dictate how we respond. Yeah, I know I was rude, but I had a really bad day. That doesn't justify it. Well, I know it was rude, but they're always rude to me. That doesn't justify it. We need to remember that you're accountable for your actions and reactions, and the goal should be to bear fruit. Because if you do, guess what's going to happen? Your spouse is going to come closer to you. They're going to trust you. There's lots of fruit from this, from learning to be kind. You're actually teaching others what to weigh out before coming to you. So let me put it this way. If you're always rude, your spouse is not going to come to you. If you're rude, or you shut them down, or you belittle them, if you do those things, then your spouse is only going to bring things to you that they have to, because they know what they're probably going to face. So they're going to start weighing out, I don't really want to bring this to you because the price tag is you're going to belittle me, you're going to be unkind to me, you're going to reject me, you're going to whatever, you fill in the blank. And if you are that person and you justify it as, well, I'm just really direct, no, you're a butthole, to put it kindly. You're just justifying being a jerk. That's all it is. Stop it. That's not the fruit of the Spirit. I don't care what personality you think you are, you can be kind because Jesus is kind. There is no justification to not be kind. You can be strong, you can be direct, you can say things that are tough for that person to hear, and you can do it all while being kind. You can. We don't do that 100% of the time, but we can make it our goal to get there. Because you're teaching your spouse, you're teaching your boss, you're teaching people that work for you, you're teaching people in your ministry that if I'm going to react this way to you consistently, then you're going to start finding ways to dance around me, to orbit around me, and to only ask things of me when you absolutely have to. You're going to start hiding things from me because you know I'm going to explode if I find out. And therefore, we need to learn not to justify those things in our own life and learn how to demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit for those around us. So I'm going to say it one more time. We want from someone else what we don't want to be ourselves. Yeah, we all want consistency from our spouse. I just don't want to be consistent myself. I want you to be kind. I just want the freedom not to be. I want you to be faithful. I just want the freedom to look at porn every once in a while, or whatever you justify on the side. It's ridiculous. You know it. I know it. And it's not good. So think about, in your relationships, what are you putting out there that's training people around you? And Imagine if that's your boss that's looking at you saying, I can't promote this person because they're unkind. Maybe they're really skilled, but they're not kind. Maybe you're terrible with customers, so I can't promote you because you're going to lose business, even though you're an incredible person at whatever it is the business does. I can't promote you because you're not kind. So as much as skill at your job is important, if you're rude, it's not going to work well. I'm just going to share this very quickly. A friend of ours that is a band called 1,000 Foot Crutch. That's old school, I know. Most of you probably don't even know who that is. But I remember the shift in the music industry where shows were getting bigger, 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 and then everything just tanked. Even big secular bands were having to get other big secular bands just to draw a crowd like they used to. Things were going downhill. Well, 1,000 Foot Crutch came to us one day. We were doing a show together, and they said, hey, I know you think we're a big deal, but the only reason we've survived is because for the last 20 years, we've practiced being kind to everyone. And we were blown away. We looked up to them because we were not as big as them. And we said, are you serious? And he said, yeah, we've been playing shows where we barely fit on the stage. We're not as big as you think we are. And they said the only reason these people are bringing us in is because of 20 years almost of just being kind to everyone we meet. Because kindness opens doors. It opens doors in the business market. It opens doors in the relationship market, and it opens doors in your marriage. What do you think, babe?
I think it's all lovely. I think you were hitting some high notes there with kindness being a fruit of the Spirit and something we have to cultivate. And there's so many reasons why. And I love talking about how feelings are great thermometers, but they're terrible thermostats. They should not set how you act, but they are great indicators of how you're doing. And so, just because you had a bad day or you feeling off or you're feeling whatever doesn't negate being kind.
And just like trust has, if you demonstrate trustworthiness, if you demonstrate kindness, it produces peacefulness. If I'm kind all the time, people feel at peace around me. If I'm not kind, they don't feel peaceful. And you can, if you put these together, trust and kindness, you got a winning combination because kindness opens doors and keeps doors open. There's a lot of things that people will do for you simply because you've been kind consistently. Now, bring that into your marriage. See what happens. Practice being consistently kind.
Yeah.
Not being weak and never talking about the hard stuff, but finding a different way to say it. Finding a kind way to say it that's not coming at the cost of the truth. Just being kind. Have you ever felt like the Lord was unkind to you? The answer is no. Because he can't be unkind. He's a loving God. He's the definition of love. He can't be unloving or unkind. So everything he does, even when he brings judgment that he doesn't want to bring because he desires mercy, even when he brings judgment, it's his kindness. It's his kindness that he's delaying the judgment because he wants people to come to know him and not experience the judgment. But if he didn't bring judgment, it would actually equal hatred for what is right. So there is a day coming when that judgment is coming. But let's move on quickly because we took a lot of time on the first two. So let's take probably less time than I was going to on the third pillar. Humility was definitely in the running here, but I picked the third word, generosity. And I picked it for a few reasons because there's more than one way to be generous. You can be generous in 1 Corinthians 13 when it talks about thinking, believing all things, believing the best in your spouse, believing the best in others. That's an act of generosity. You can be generous with your time. You can be generous with your finances. You can be generous in serving others, lifting other people up. You can even just be generous in the way you are cheerful to someone. If someone makes a mistake, you can cover for them and be generous towards them. There's many ways to be generous, and God is a generous God in all of those ways. So I want you to not just think finances or physical gifts, but I do want to read one proverb that I memorized as a teenager, and I've never forgotten this. It's stuck with me a long time. Proverbs 18:16, a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before the great. Some Bible translation says brings him before kings, ushers him into the presence of the great. But the idea here is, some would say, oh, that's your spiritual gift. Well, that probably does it too. But I think this gift is straight up talking about a physical, you're transferring something, whether it's a jewelry or an item or finances or whatever. I think all of us would agree that a spiritual gifting or a skill does usher you into the presence of the great as well. So if you're going to think about this, what would it look like to be generous to your spouse? Is it possible that you could give them the gift of your love? Is it possible that you could look at their love languages and be generous towards their love languages? Is it possible that even at your work, you were generous in the way you treated other people, in the way you covered other people, in the way you lifted other people up? That you could be generous in that. That when people get around you, they sense you're a generous person. Because the fruit of generosity is fantastic. If I want to demonstrate generosity, here's a few ways to do it. I want to give value to you. I want to help you. I want to serve you. Excuse me. I want to be generous to you in those things. I always, anytime I worked for someone, I wanted to be worth more than what they paid me, because I wanted to feel like I was a gift to them. And I know there's people out there that did abuse that and others that did not, but I always wanted that feeling that I'm being generous to you. I want to be worth more than what I'm getting paid, because I want to be generous to you. What about believing the best in others? That's an act of generosity. What about giving more value to someone than they give to you? I'm being generous to you. You can give money to the poor and they're not really able to give you any money. You're being generous to them. And being generous is an act of giving someone what they need. If you see someone that's starving to death, you probably need to buy them some food, not take them for a car ride. You give them what they need. You're being generous in the needs around you and giving that to them. What if you brought that into your marriage? What if you brought that into your workplace, where you were actively looking for what your boss needs and being generous in that? You were seeking that out from your coworkers and being generous to them. What would that look like? What would you say?
You mean specifically?
Yeah, talk about generosity in that light. What do you think that would breed in a relational environment when you walk in the room and people see you?
I think an attitude of generosity, or having a character trait of generosity, it does open doors for you. And I think it opens relational doors peer to peer. And in that, when people know that you're a generous person, or they know that you're generous with kind words, or you're generous with when I think of generosity, one thing relationally, and I'm not talking about like financial or gifts or whatever, I think of openness, and I think of someone who is welcoming and kind, which we already covered, but I think of somebody who is not inhibited by anything.
They do bleed into each other, don't they?
They for sure do, but I think generosity in general just has an openness and a freeness about it. Whereas if someone is a generous person, and we're not talking about financial or gifts or whatever, I think there is a confidence, there's an attitude of, I don't want to say carefree, but there's just an air of confidence of, I have something to offer here in just who I am. And so I bring that into my spaces. And with that comes all of the fruit of the Spirit. With that comes character traits that make you an upstanding person. And so I think being generous in relational context really does create space for connection. I think it creates space for people to receive and give back to you. And I think it creates an opportunity. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Time to wake up.
Time to wake up. I think it just creates an opportunity for things to go both ways. So without diving into, the fruits of the Spirit specifically or character traits specifically, I think generosity just creates an openness, a good flow of all the good things.
Are you falling asleep? Are you boring yourself to sleep right now?
Definitely not.
We can't do that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to bust out one of these other sound effects and wake you up.
Oh, no.
You know what I just realized is that there is a connection between generosity and graciousness. That generosity is going to cost you something. It might cost you something you give away. It could be money or some other physical item. It could be your time. It could be you're generous in listening to someone. Just listening to someone is an act of generosity and graciousness because you're giving something they don't deserve. That's the definition of grace.
Right.
Now, even if they do deserve it, you can be generous. But let me just say, God is a generous God in every way, shape, and form. And we need to expand the way we think about generosity, and we need to aim that at everyone around us. We need to aim it at our spouse. We need to aim it at our kids, at our workplace, and our ministry. We need to aim it at the people closest to us because we're all guilty of this. We're good at being gracious to someone that we barely know and not gracious to someone we're really close to. And the reason is because we've practiced these cycles that create a viciousness and fatigue, and it's harder to be kind to them over and over and over again. But really, we should be really kind to them because they're the people in our circles that we're running and doing life with. Therefore, generosity and graciousness, being gracious towards someone, is the heart of God. And when you're generous, it opens doors. So like Proverbs says in chapter 18, that generosity or the gift makes way for the giver. What that means is when someone gives, it opens doors.
Yeah, and I think of the word abundance as well, because with generosity, if you're being more specific, generosity really does have elements of abundance. And so there's abundance of kindness, there's abundance of grace, there's abundance of peace, because you can't give what you don't have. And if you have peace, love, we'll just use the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If you have those things and you have an abundance of those things, then giving them in generosity is going to exponentially grow the fruit. So you have a greater harvest in all of those things in all relationships. And so generosity really can't come without abundance. And I think abundance, when you're talking about not tangible things, has to be a mindset of abundance. So I have an abundance of peace, and therefore I'm going to walk in generosity and bring peace into the room. Or I have an abundance of kindness, and I practice kindness and have that as a fruit of the Spirit, which we talked about the intentionality behind that. But when you have it in spades, you can give it in spades. And I think it just applies across the board when you're not talking about things like financial or tangible things you can hold on to, is that you have to have an abundance mindset that says, I have this and I can give it away. So I think generosity is a great word to be the third pillar, because when you have generosity, it really does encompass a lot behind that. And therefore, giving all of those things into a relationship comes from a place of abundance and really does bring the fullness to the relationship. And so I think generosity is a great word to be a pillar, because you just have to live in a place of constantly giving, and you can't give what you don't have. And so you got to cultivate all those things.
Think about a snow globe. If you were on the outside of the snow globe and you could look in and see a married couple practicing those three things, they're demonstrating trust in the ways we defined. They're being consistent. They're being transparent. They're being faithful. And that's breeding vulnerability, closeness, joy in the relationship. They're being kind to one another, and that's creating an atmosphere of peace in their home, because kindness breeds peace, anger does not. And shouting and being angry all the time does not breed a peaceful atmosphere.
For sure.
The Bible says that God fills the air of our praises, and we need to be careful when we lash out in anger. But back to the point, when you watch spouses being generous to one another, and you're standing on the outside of the snow globe looking in, how much would you desire that? Now, here's the thing. You get to be that, and you get to build that slowly but surely, putting one foot in front of the other by making it your goal to be intentional. We all know America's Got Talent. It's a great TV show. And the only reason someone stands on the stage is because they have a gift. And that gift opened doors for them to, quote unquote, stand before great people, right? Well, that is a true statement, but it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a different kind of gift where you're giving something to someone and it's opening doors to their heart. And it does bring you before great people, obviously. But the Bible says, I'm not suggesting favoritism. What I'm suggesting is that when someone is generous to you, it does change your heart posture towards them. So when they give you something, their time, their listening ear, their finances, whatever, your heart is going to change in its posture towards that person. It's going to soften towards them, and you're going to receive them because it just changes the way you perceive the person. Again, it's not favoritism. It's just the truth that a gift opens doors for you, that when you're generous, it opens doors. So what would that look like with your spouse? What would that look like at your workplace? That if you're that listening ear, if you're that generous with your time, what kind of doors would that open? Now, if you put these three pillars and you made it intentional, without these three pillars, guess what comes crashing down? The building it was holding up. And anyone that practices gossip will eventually implode if they don't repent and get it right. Anyone who practices breaking trust or any antithesis of anything we've talked about, everything will implode on them someday. It might take longer for some than others, but it will implode. And therefore, if you want to build something that lasts, do it by being like Jesus. Be kind to one another because God is kind to you. Build trust. Demonstrate trustworthiness. There's great fruit in your life and in theirs that will come from doing those things. Be generous. And I want to remind you that there's always a demonstration, then there's a decision. You can be respectful, but that doesn't mean they're going to respect you. You can demonstrate, but they still have to make a decision. So do your job, worry about you, get good at it. Now, I think it's time for us to close this down. Is there anything that you would like to say before we shut this down?
No, next time you should give me notes.
Notes? Well, you did fine. You did just fine. Those of you that don't know, in a couple days, I'm leaving for Brazil. We're going to go do a miracle crusade in the city of Veranópolis. It's down south Brazil. I would really, really appreciate your prayers for us. Thank God the finances for this event have been covered. But if you would like to sow into this ministry to help us continue to do the events that are coming up after Brazil, to continue building the discipleship course that we're building, would you click the link that we just put in the chat and partner with us financially? We would really appreciate it. We will put every dollar you give to work for discipling people, for reaching the lost for Jesus. We are so excited to see the tides turning because in this city that we're about to go to, there's a team of about 30 young people that were at one of the previous crusades. who got discipled, and now they're coming to be the ministry team. It's incredible what's happening when discipleship is employed, and we just want to see more of it. We want to do more of it, and it does require finances to do it. So would you partner with us? If you don't see the link, you can go to awakeninghopeministries.com, and you can click the donate button there. Whether you're on a laptop or your cell phone, you'll find it. Just click the donate button. Or you can go to Facebook and find us through there as well. Awakening Hope Ministries. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have some great topics coming up. We're going to talk about spiritual warfare. We're going to go a little bit in depth there to a degree that maybe a lot of people watching have never been. We're also going to talk about demonic possession. Can a Christian be possessed? We're going to talk about some other things, and I don't think you're going to want to miss this. They're hot topics, and it's really important that we have answers to these kinds of things. So please like, share, subscribe, follow, all the things. God bless you. Thank you so much for tuning in.